Welcome to the campfire, folks. Gather round. All right, folks, get comfortable, because this is one of those stories that'll make you believe anything's possible in this big old world. It's the tale of Paul Bunyan and the great Minnesota logging camp. And if you listen close, you might hear the creak of the trees and the thud of his axe echoing through the night. It all started one winter, real cold, the kind of cold that would freeze the sap right in the trees. The lakes were all iced over, the snow was deep enough to swallow whole pine trees, and the wind howling like a wild thing. Paul, though, he wasn't one to let a little snow get in his way. He was out there, chopping timber with a crew of men who were just trying to keep up with him. He'd swing that axe, and it was like a bolt of lightning striking the earth. Trees fell like dominoes, crashing in a way that shook the ground beneath your feet. Well, Paul was always looking for new ways to clear land and make things easier. One night, after a long day of cutting, he sat down by the fire with his crew, and the camp was quiet. Quiet like it always got after a day of hard work. But then Paul leaned forward and said, "You know what we need? A road." And not just any road, a fast road. A road that could stretch across the whole country, from the lakes of Minnesota down to the bustling cities. And the crew laughed at first, thinking he was talking crazy. "Paul, a road that big? That's impossible," they said. But Paul wasn't one for impossible. He had that glint in his eye, the kind that made you think he could move mountains. And sometimes he did. So he stood up, dusted the snow off his boots, and hollered out into the wilderness. "Babe!" he bellowed. And a moment later there came a thunderous rumble in the distance. The snow cracked, and through the swirling storm came Babe, the blue ox, stomping through the snow like a freight train on four hooves. Babe was so big that his footsteps left footprints the size of small lakes. Paul grinned, his teeth bright against the cold night. He reached up, scratched Babe's massive horn, and said, "We've got work to do, old girl. Let's make this road." So Paul and Babe set to work. You ever seen a man clear a path through a forest? It's a lot of sweat, a lot of time. But Paul, he didn't have time for any of that. He swung his axe, one mighty blow after another. And each time that axe hit the tree, it was like a thunderclap. The trees fell with such force that it was like the earth was trembling beneath them. And Babe, well, she was the real workhorse of the operation. She'd stomp her hooves, and where she stepped, a whole new path would form. A dirt road wide enough for a team of horses to trot through. Only that road was being cleared in minutes. It was like watching a bulldozer and a wrecking ball in one. The men, now wide-eyed and slack-jawed, tried to keep up. They'd cut down the trees and pull them off to the side, but it was barely even worth the effort. Paul and Babe had already cleared miles of forest by the time the crew even had their breakfast. And in the dead of winter, when the snow was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, Paul and Babe didn't slow down. They kept going, through the snow, through the ice, their breath rising like steam from the cold. It was the morning of the fourth day, still snowing, still freezing, but Paul and Babe were nearly done with their road. By this point, the men were starting to feel the weight of it all. Muscles sore, lungs burning from the cold air. And then, boom, a mighty thud, and a crash that could have woken the dead. Paul stopped in his tracks and looked around. And there, towering over them like a mountain, was the biggest, most massive pile of rocks they had ever seen, blocking the path. It was the kind of thing that would stop any ordinary man, maybe even Babe, but not Paul. "Hold tight," Paul said, grinning. He grabbed his axe, swung it high, and with one mighty chop, he cleaved through the biggest boulder like it was made of soft clay. Bam! The rock shattered, and before you could blink, the road was clear again, and they were on their way. After that, there wasn't a tree left standing for miles in any direction. The road stretched on and on, across the lakes, through the forest, past hills and mountains. And when Paul was finally done, They say he sat down on a fallen tree, pulled out his pipe, and let out a deep sigh. "Not bad," he said, smiling at Babe, who was resting next to him, munching on a little bit of snow-covered grass. "But don't get too comfy. We've got more to clear." And that's the story of how Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox carved a road through the heart of the Minnesota wilderness, faster than anyone thought possible, making the land as wide and open as the sky. And if you ever find yourself walking down a lonely road in the woods, listen real close. You might just hear the faint sound of Paul's axe ringing in the distance, cutting through the trees, as he keeps right on working to make the world a little bit bigger. Now, anybody else got a wild story they've heard about Paul? Please share in the comments, like, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.